All right. Can everyone see my screen? Okay. I love board games, and as fellow board game designers, I believe you would be interested as well. So a question that we often ask ourselves as board game designers is, how can we maximize board game sales? I included a web application demo which I posted onto the Zoom chat that you guys could play around with my model as I go through the slides. So the main reason why I feel like you guys would be interested in my model is that I specifically chose features that I feel like we as board game designers could take into consideration when doing our board game design process. My model iteration consists of first acquiring all the data, which included basically 120,000 board games. And I used Beautiful Soup to parse the HTML data, used Scrapey to send web crawlers to various websites to gather more data, and then the additional data, I used the Board Game Geek API in order to gather everything else. That resulted in a lot of features, and we're talking about upwards of 5,000. So in order to feature select, I used lasso regression with an intensely high alpha to filter through those features and came up with just 42 essential ones. This addressed both multi-collinearity between features and also created a simpler model which could be less daunting for the audience today. I used feature engineering with a second-degree polynomial to find interaction terms. I also included principal component analysis in order to address some of the dimensionality reduction. And I took the log transform of my target variable in order to address some of the skewness. But I actually found that my original target variable performed better than the log transform, so I used the original. And then finally, I did my model selection. So let's talk about some of the model iterations. I started off with a linear and rich regression with all the 5,000 features, and then I feature selected, which created a better model. And then, on this side, I did principal component analysis just to see how I could model with less dimensions. And the interesting thing about this was that I was able to achieve an RMSE around 1,500 with just 3 principal components. So in terms of simplicity, this was the easiest. But I wanted to focus on accuracy. So I did a second and third order polynomial, which ended up overfitting my data. So I used a lasso again to filter through and find the most essential interaction terms and included that in my final model for linear regression. So this is my performance for my final model. I scored on my test set, and I had an RMSE of 1,200, an MAE of 273, and wait for it, a R squared of 0.74, which is incredible. So that's a lot of numbers and statistics, but as designers, what are the takeaways? Here are some tips and tricks. Awards are great. The more the better, and you can focus on competitions. Here's a word cloud that I created using the beta values. And we all know about the Spiel des Jahres, highest, most prestigious board game award. But I also found that the rest of these were quite interesting as well. Hira Roku actually performed better. And some of these awards, we actually have better qualifications that we can take into consideration when designing our board game. So, in my web app, you can play around with various game mechanics that you can include in order to maximize your score. And then we all want our games to be accessible. So focus on minimizing complexity of your game so that more people would be willing to buy it. Party games are the rage nowadays. We want to interact and socialize. So the more players you include in your game, the better off. And the last one here is really important. Advertise your board game. We found that Amazon Prime and podcasts have higher beta values than most awards, which is insane because whether or not the Boolean of your Amazon your board game is available on Amazon, true or false, has a higher correlation to success than winning an award, which is insane. So in my appendix, I included a lot of the nitty-gritty like data science stuff, like the PCA, some of the beta values that I highlighted to be more important, as long as like the log transformed and like the regression and residuals. And you can take a look at that if you want to look a little bit more on all the like modeling process under the hood behind my project. But anyways, thank you very much. And if you guys were playing around with it, this was the web app that I developed for the project. You could try to achieve the balloons, which happens only if you are able to sell 1,000 board games by playing around with the various features. Which, whether or not it's on Amazon Prime or not, already does it, so it's kind of dumb. But anyways, thank you very much for seeing my project, and I hope that by playing around with this app and also looking at the various features that I highlighted, you could create a better board game that can lead to success. Thank you very much.